Good morning, guys. Today we are gonna pick up from where we left our last chapter that we are going to write now, The Lost Spring by Anis Jung. So, we have already started it. We have come to know about Anis Jung, who she is, and we have come to know about her work. And we have started the story with this boy named Sahib and his interaction with the narrator, how he said that he is deprived of not getting school where he can read, where he can study, and he is belonging to a community of rag pickers, and their work is to pick rags around the area. And we are also known of the fact that he had come from Bangladesh, Dhaka, that's a neighboring countries, our neighboring country, and they have settled over here in search of gold. As I told you, search of gold doesn't mean etymologically and literally they are here to find gold, but they are here to earn their livelihood. So we had left it so far. We'll continue and pick up from here, the next part. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. So, in the previous chapter, in the previous video, previous page, we have seen that yes, this narrator, she asks the boys, this team of boys, this team of rag picker boys, that why aren't you wearing any shoes? And they say, one of them replies by saying that I have one pair, but my mother doesn't let me wear it every time because I am only allowed to wear them during special occasion. Another boy was there. He said that even if his mother give him pair of shoes, he's going to throw it off them anyway. And that particular boy, he was wearing two mismatched shoes. The third boy was there. He replied by saying that I had always wanted to have a shoe, but I never had the opportunity to get a shoe. So the poet, she empathizes with them, and she thinks in herself that leave about education, these people who have come from the neighboring country and have taken refuge in this country and is working as rag pickers to earn their livelihood, does not even have the basic requirements of life, and it is extremely fanciful for them to fathom that yes, they are going to get proper education in this country, which is something that an idea that they cannot fathom at their darkest thoughts, or their uh, it is impossible for them to get it. So we start here as the narrator says that she had once had a talk with a man from Udupi who knows a young boy who often before going to school used to pray in a temple for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. So here we have seen that this place in Udupi where the narrator had met with this man, this place is gradually evolving into a better lifestyle of the people. And here 30 years ago a boy had prayed to God for getting shoes, and when he finally got the shoes he had prayed to God that he never lose them. And now the narrator encounters a little boy who come back from school panting with this heavy school bag on his back, and then he throws off the bag, and he was well dressed in his shoes, gray socks and everything. He was properly well uniformed. And this is the changing scenario of this place where people have evolved into a new modern and better lifestyle. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remained shoeless. So here the narrator, she draws a comparison between the two phases of the society. That is this boy in Udupi who was granted the wish, and goddess had given him shoes, and she had prayed to the goddess that he never lose this pair of shoes, and he did not do it. So but the children who are the belonging to the rag picker community, they are even today unheard. The goddess have not heard their prayers, and today, still today, they are walking barefoot without any shoes. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers lead me to Simapuri. So this year we are introduced to actual background of the place where this is the this is the actual background. This area called Simapuri, it's in Delhi, and this place is actually known for the Raktikas community. See, I have given you two pictures over here, and this place is extremely famous or infamous, you can say rather, because the Raktikas, the people living in the slums of Simapuri, their biggest occupation is rag picking, and these people are not the native people of this country. They have come from other neighboring countries and they are living here, earning their livelihood out of rag picking. Okay. So, my acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers lead me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. As I told you, the people living in Simapuri are not the native people of India. These people are the squatters or the refugees who came in 1971 from Bangladesh when the East Pakistan or the erstwhile Bangladesh that time was known as East Pakistan, and East Pakistan did its liberation war and become Bangladesh finally in 1971. We all know it. So these people who actually traveled across the country and reached over here, these are the one who are living right now in Simapuri. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it's no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin divide of sewage, drainage or running water live 10,000 rag pickers. So you can get a scenario, the physical appearance of this entire area. These are made of small huts, you can say, that are made of roofs of tin and tarpaulin. Tarpaulin is a kind of plastic sheet. You can often see it in marriage functions and all, mainly during this rainy season. It is being covered from the top so that water doesn't seep in. It's a very thick cloth made of plastic body, and when the material is plastic and it water doesn't seep in, so to protect these people during the monsoon season, because we all know Delhi have a heavy monsoon, so to protect these people from the monsoon season, these huts that are made of mud, their roof was covered with either tin or this tarpaulin. Okay. And there are no proper sewage facilities, no proper drainage facilities, no electric facilities, no running water, no proper drinking water facilities. Mainly this place is made it was uh, what we can say, this place was barren land. This place was not used at that time. It was wilderness in the sense, maybe there were it was a area covered with trees and all. Wilderness doesn't mean jungle all the time, but it was not inhabited by people. But these people who had passed across the border of the country and reached here from Bangladesh, they set up their community over here, and they are still living over here, and there are 10,000 such houses and 10,000 rack pickers. There are 10,000 such rack pickers living today in this area of Simapuri. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their name on voter list and enable them to buy grain. So these people, you understand, these people are not being provided any sort of identity. Okay, except what they are given ration cards by the government, the local political leaders. They have provided them ration cards to do what? To buy votes from them in lieu of some food grains that they provide through these ration cards. Food is more important for survival than an identity. This is a satirical irony that the author punches in. She says that yes, filling up our tummy is more important than giving you an identity. It doesn't matter what identity you have in the society. At the end of the day, you are having square meals. That is enough for you to survive. So this is what it is true for the people, this 10,000 rack pickers living in Simapuri. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Now, definitely, we all know that Bangladesh is full of greenery, there are beautiful rivers and lakes, and also the author one day asks the woman of this community, this Rakpikas community, that why did you leave your country and come here? And they readily answered that over there they were living in extreme poverty. They had no grains that were cultivated out of their fields. They had nothing to eat. It is better to earn a living right here by picking rags than to die in hunger in that country. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit home. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. So, these track picking communities, what they have done throughout the country at different places, not only Simapuri is just an example and the background of this story, but if you go around in different parts of this country, mainly in the big metro cities, you will find these communities are there. They are no one's, but they are the people who had taken refuge in our country during the 1971 Liberation War, and they had come over here in search of a livelihood. Wherever they can find food, they have made their transit homes. Transit home here means they have made their temporary homes. Okay, transit means temporary homes. They have made their temporary homes out of this tin and tarpaulin and all, this object that they can take whenever they needed to shift their place. And over here their children are born, and these children are readily becomes the part of their own workforce. They also work along with their parents in gathering rags, in picking rags, and selling these for livelihood. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportion of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. Okay, so what it is said that these people in Simapuri, they have expertise in rag picking. They have done this for 30 long years and they are expert in doing so. And to them garbage is gold. Please underline this. This garbage to them is gold. It is an oxymoron. Garbage to them is gold. Underline this line. This is an oxymoron. Okay, it is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. So, for the older communities of older people of this community, the older people of this communities, this is nothing. This rag picking is nothing but to earn the bread and butter for them as well as their family at the end of the day. But for the children, it is even more. The children, who are the children here referred to? The children of the rag picking communities. I sometimes find rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. So why it is more for a child? Because sometime in that garbage, heap, he can find a 1 rupee note, and sometime even a 10 rupee note. That what Sahib disclosed with the narrator, and by doing, while he was doing so, his eyes lighten up. That means he is extremely happy, and he proudly declares that sometimes he even find 1 rupee and 10 rupee note in that garbage heap. When you could find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. Now, this line is kind of metaphorical in the sense that, when you start a better living, when you start finding a better way to live, you start scrounging for more. You start trying harder. Now, we people are blessed with a good financial condition. We come from good family background and all, but people, mainly children who are suffers from poverty, children who are suffering from this financial stringency, they do what? They actually look for opportunities in different things, and when they find one ray of hope, they start scrounging for more, and then ultimately they are met with a passion to find the ultimate goal, where they can live life to the fullest. They can live life in their own terms. They can buy everything with whatever money they earn. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. So, for the children, of these Raktikin communities, the narrator says that it's a kind of a game for them too. There is competition between two or three teams of boys and girls who are, practicing in the morning. They do what? They start scrounging this garbage areas for different valuable objects, not only rupees or silver coins. This is a metaphorical term. Valuable objects, sometimes we throw them away, and these rack pickers, they take them up and they take it home and they sell it for a bigger value. So this is a mean of, this is something that is so much a feeling of pleasure for these children who finds it, that something this is wrapped in wonder. And but for these people who are the older ones in this community and who are also engaged in this occupation, for them it is their means of survival and to earn their livelihood. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it stand behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. So one winter morning, the narrator catches a glimpse of this young boy who was standing near the fence of the neighborhood club where two young men dressed in all white were playing tennis. And Sahib says to the, he was speaking to the narrator, and he says to the narrator that yes, he loves the sport, and often a time the gatekeeper of this club would let him in where he can play in that swing. That day, the narrator also sees that Sahib is wearing torn and tattered tennis shoes that he seems too much, mismatched with his discolored shorts and shirt. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. And when Sahib sees that the narrator was watching this, his discolored tennis shoes, his torn and tattered tennis shoes, he readily declares by saying that yes, someone have given it to me, don't worry, I have not stolen it from anyone. And the narrator thinks in herself that yes, this is may have been belonged to a rich boy who had refused to wear them and throw them off into the garbage, into the trash can, by giving an excuse that these shoes have got holes in them and it is not going according to his status to wear them. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. Now, this also is a very big, this line gives a very big message. It is symbolic of the fact that for beggars, it gives into this proverb, the beggars cannot be choosers. When you don't have anything, when you don't possess the ability to buy something, you don't possess the ability to buy the necessities of life, you don't have any choice. You have to go along with it, what is you are blessed with. Whatever you get in your hand, you have to do with it, no matter how bad it is, but you have to walk with it. There is no other opportunity for you to do otherwise. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I walk in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib's no longer his own master. So finally, the narrator meets with this young boy Sahib, whom she catches one day that he was going to the local milk booth. Okay, carrying a canister. Canisters are the big, milk cans, big milk cans that can be carried. Uh, I don't know whether you have seen it over here, the canisters, but if you Google it out, you are going to see these canisters. They are the big milk containers that the milkman often takes it and deliver the milk from one stall to another. So this milk canister was on his back and he was on his way to the milk booth. And when Sahib meets the narrator, he says that yes, nowadays I am working in a tea stall, but somewhere he was not happy. Somewhere it feels that Sahib has lost his own, his own freedom, At first he was at rack picking, he was doing this work, but he was his own master. Now he is working as a servant under a tea shop owner who pays him 800 rupees per month and also pays for all his meals. He is okay, he is earning good, but somehow he have lost his freedom that he was having when he was doing this rack picking job. Okay, so this part of the story, this part, the part one of the Lost Spring ends over here. We will continue with the second part from our next day. Thank you so much. Please watch the video, and in our next Zoom class we will discuss about it.